Alrighty, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to your favorite podcast, As the Cauldron Bubbles. This is your special host, Jasmine, and I'm back with my lovely guest again.
Hello, it's me, Nora or Australia, and let's get into some Valentine's tea.
Yes, this episode we are going to be talking about Valentine's Day, lust magic, Lupercalia, werewolves. So first, I'm
Werewolves?
gonna werewolves question mark. First, I do want to start off with, of course, wishing everyone a happy Valentine's. Remember that it's never too late to start investing in loving yourself, honey. Okay, you got to put you first. You've got to put you first. But some of these holidays that we have here for the month of February, I'm going to be looking at this book here called The Grandmother Time. This is a really great book, by the way, for anyone who might be interested in learning a little bit more about maybe some of the lesser known pagan holidays. So I'm going to go through this list. There's a little bit here, and then we're going to get into the conversation. So February 1st, we have the Lesser Eleusinian Mysteries. February 2nd, we have the Feast of Bridget, of course. February 3rd, we have the celebration of Brigantia. February 11th, Our Lady of Lourdes. February 12th, Protection of Wildlife Festival of Diana. February 13th through the 21st, Parentalia. February 14th, St. Valentine's Day, the first of the resurrected Lupercalia festivals, and Susan B. Anthony's birthday. That's interesting that that's included in a pagan holiday book, but hey, I'm down, I guess.
Very sacred day.
Right? February 16th, celebration of Victoria. February 17th, Fornicalia, Feast of Ovens. Hello. Honey, what's in your oven? Okay. Hello. February 18th, Festival of Women. February 19th, Feralia, Purification Festival. February 20th, the sun enters Pisces. That's a very holy day. Absolutely, of course, naturally. February 22nd, Concordia, I think it is. February 26th, Hygeia's Day. And February 29th, Leap Year Day. So that's just a list of some holidays that we have here in February. I'm sure there's more. That's just what's in this book. Yeah, and it's like I said, it's really cool. Grandmother Time. I actually found this copy. I didn't even know about this book until I found it at Half Price Books. Definitely always make sure to check your metaphysical sections as well as your folklore and horticulture sections at your, local thrift bookstores, because you can definitely find lots of cool gems. And this is one of those that is pretty cool. And it has a decent amount of information, enough to kind of open the door for you to start doing some of your own research about some of these holidays. And speaking of research, you've looked at some stuff on Lupercalia. So what have you found for us?
I have. And, I will admit the first place that I heard about Lupercalia from was, of course, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. But it was a real pagan holiday in ancient Rome. And it happened actually on February 15th. And the basis of the holiday is it revolves around Romulus and Remus, who are the founders of Rome. Which a quick little piece of historical tea behind that is their uncle was not a nice guy. King Amulius, ordered that the two twins be drowned in the river, and
which literally so rude of him. Yeah, let's just say. Well, so rude.
And it was because their mother broke a vow of celibacy. The servant who had to do it took pity on Romulus and Remus and sent them down the river in a basket that got caught on a branch, and they were rescued and taken care of by a she-wolf who had a cave at the base of Palatine Hill, which is where Rome was founded. Now, the actual celebration of Lupercalia is kind of wild, girl.
Girl, let's get into it, girl.
It's kind of wild. So Lupercalia was kind of like a series of festivals that would happen in the night. But unlike Valentine's Day, it was kind of bloody, kind of violent, and very sexually driven. So
we love the blood and we love the violence.
we do. So what would happen is people would go to this cave at the base of Palatine Hill, where Romulus and Remus were taken care of by the she-wolf, and there would be a ritual sacrifice of goats and a dog to the wolf god Lupercus, and he wasn't really a wolf god. He was associated with wolves, but he was more like an ancient Roman version of Pan, with more associations to wolves than goats. But he was like a god of the fields. And they would make sacrifices, like I said, of goats and a dog, and then they would smear blood on the foreheads of these naked priests, the Luperci, which, by the way, stands for, I believe it's Brothers of the Wolf. Yes, Brothers of the Wolf. And this is kind of where the werewolf tea comes in, but we'll get to that later. But they would have blood smeared on their head, and then it would be washed off with wool soaked in milk. And then there would be a big old feast back in Rome. Everybody would be partying and having a good time. And the priests would take strips of the recently sacrificed goats, strips of their skin, to create these long thongs that they would then run through the streets naked and whip ladies with. The romance part of this festival is limited, because basically what would happen is, usually at the beginning of the festival, women would put their names into jars that would be drawn by the menfolk, and usually they would attend the festival with those men and sometimes stay with them until the next year's Lupercalia. And some of them fell in love and got married and things like that. So I guess that's where the romance comes in. But really, largely, it was all about coupling, getting it on, killing stuff, you know.
You know, the stuff that us good old pagans are all about, as good pagan women.
Right. So really, the big werewolf tea in this comes down to like people's conception of Lupercus, the deity, and the Luperci, who are the priests. You know how people are, Jazz. You know, when they get like a wolf god or something like that, the edgelords got to grab a hold of it, and they're like, oh yeah, werewolf god, metal.
Literally.
And that doesn't mean that there's no validity behind that. If you because thought forms are a thing, stuff builds up on the astral. It is entirely possible that through this identification, if there are people who are still devoted to Lupercus in this day and age, maybe they do have some werewolf tea going on. Who am I to say? I don't know. But it's not uncommon for gods of wild animals to, one, be associated with shape-shifting, and that, of course, leads the mind to the idea of lycanthropy. And Lupercus is not the only deity that I have come across that is compared to lycanthropy. There's also the Slavic god Volos, who is compared to that. He's, again, another god of wildlife and beasts. So, yeah, I mean, that's Lupercalia in a nutshell. It's party, sacrifice some stuff, party, whip some ladies with some whips and goat leather, and worship the god of wolves, essentially.
Well, and some of what I have seen, mirrors everything that you've mentioned, aside from in some of the videos I've watched about it. I don't know if this is completely a historical tea, or if this is kind of more of a neo-pagan addition to the festival. I don't know if the Luperci are split into these ranks prior to the festival, or if it's just for this festival. But part of the ceremony involving the sacrificial blood and the goat's milk is the dog is supposed to, from what I've seen, actually represent the she-wolf, who is like the mother that raised Romulus and Remus. And then the dog that is sacrificed is supposed to be like a representation of that, I guess. And there would be two members selected from the group of Romulus and the group of Remus, because those brothers, I'm pretty sure that they had like a big feud or something like that. They fought, didn't they? I think.
There is a bit of a Cain and Abelty there. Also, to continue the whole werewolf thing, if you look at lots of different like werewolf fiction, a lot of times in certain pieces of fiction, they'll link werewolves to Romulus and Remus because they were raised by the she-wolf.
And that kind of makes me kind of feel like, in terms of the werewolf aspect of this, just looking at this specific mythos, like I definitely can see how lycanthropy would be linked to this, and I can see how the werewolf community, or part of it at least, would kind of link Romulus and Remus since they were raised by the she-wolf. And I think that the priests probably venerated the she-wolf as like probably kind of like a mother goddess sort of almost figure, or a maternal spirit, if you will. And then I feel like its blood would kind of be a representation of like the magic and the power and the, you know, the ferality of the she-wolf that
Absolutely.
they are kind of being blessed by. And the goat's milk, I would imagine that would be some sort of like maternal metaphor as well. And then in terms of this wolf god, like as priests, they, in my eyes, and this is not necessarily like a historical tea. This is just Jasmine's personal hot take on all of this. I could see how the priests, the Lupercalia, if you will, would kind of be devas in a way of this energy of the she-wolf, of this deity, and how they would be kind of like werewolves. Like I could see how that practice would make sense. And I could see how, even if it is just a completely neo-pagan tradition, I could see the spiritual validity in that. And one of the things that I've been working on is putting together this video and some content about shape-shifting and the craft. And I'm not going to touch on that content a lot in this video, but what I will say is shape-shifting, I think, has been a big part of the craft for as long as we've had like written folklore about witches. Like one of the things that comes to mind is I know that in Central America, there's a big belief that like owls are actually witches that have shapeshifted, or the same is said sometimes, I believe, about rabbits in like England. I think there's a specific lore. I think it's England at least. But there's lots of lore around the world of witches shape shifting into animals. And in the lore, typically it's seen as like a physical thing. And, you know, I look at this as more of like, this is an astral situation. So to me, shape shifting and having a spirit form in the astral, whether you're astral projecting, whether you're astral traveling, whether you are astral journeying or hedge crossing, because I believe that there are some differences there with that. I definitely think that you can, one, use the spirit vessel itself to where like you'd be seen through the eyes of the animal and traveling in that spirit vessel, or two, straight up possessing something else.
Mm-hmm. And that legend that you're thinking of from Europe is the legend of Isabel Gowdy. Actually, she was from Scotland. I was about to say from Scottish. She's from Scotland, and she was apprehended during the witch trials and everything like that. But we actually have in historical record the incantation that Isabel used, because she would take the form of a hare. So her incantation to take the likeness of a hare is, "I shall go into a hare with sorrow and cinch and mickle care, and I shall go in the devil's name, while I come home again." And then there's an incantation that was used to return to the normal form. This is all easily findable on the Googles. But shapeshifting is very much a big part of witchcraft. I definitely agree. And dare I say that those of us of the, trans persuasion are not too unfamiliar with the aspects of shapeshifting. No?
Every day.
Every
Every
day.
single day.
Every day. We shapeshift in all day long. So, in continuation with this discussion, do we want to talk a little bit about like the history of Valentine's Day? Because really, that's more like a Catholic tea.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, there was Saint Valentine, right?
Yeah.
Like
So,
that's kind of our focal figure here with this holiday.
yeah, absolutely. So basically, what it is in the third century AD, you have Emperor Claudius II, and he's a pagan ruler of Rome. Now, the jury is kind of out as to whether the Valentine that is talked about in some of the legends are the same Valentine or if it's two. Because there's a theory there that Claudius might have gotten a hold of two Valentines. But the original story is that Claudius had Valentine imprisoned because he was marrying people using Christianity, and he was preaching Christianity, and Claudius and Valentine would go back and forth. Valentine was, while imprisoned, actively trying to convert Claudius to Christianity, and Claudius was like, we ain't having it, drop your religion, and Valentine said no and got his head chopped off for it. The other legend is that Valentine was tutoring a young girl named Julia, and again, he was executed. But the whole thing about this legend is that Julia was blind, and because Valentine was so loved by God, when Julia and him played together, her eyesight was restored. And then on the day that he went to be executed, he pinned a note to Julia's dress, and it said, from your Valentine. And then after this, you know, the Catholic Church was like, hey, you're a pretty great guy, we're going to martyr you, and we're going to abolish Lupercalia because that's some pagan nonsense. And we're going to celebrate Valentine's Day, and it's going to be a celebration of love. And then, of course, now we have the holiday we have today, which is all about candy and cards and flowers.
And chocolates, even.
I mean,
Some chocolates.
A couple chocolates, hopefully filled with like rum or something.
And I think that this kind of, leads us into some of our magic teas, our witchcraft teas in correlation to Valentine's Day, in correlation to lust magic, right? And I think that all of these items that we have associated with Valentine's Day are items that are tokens of love or lust and affection, and are definitely things that can be enchanted or imbued for your Valentine or for yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, let's go ahead and preface this now. Like, use your better judgment. As we've said in past episodes, you know, if you're going to do any kind of magic, do your divination. And I think something that we need to just put out there right off the bat, it shouldn't have to be said, but we're going to say it. In anything you do, please get consent. Don't be trying to do less magic on people who don't want it, because that's, you know what it is. Don't do it.
Yeah, we're not going to say the four-letter R word, but that's definitely how it comes off. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I think especially amongst my friends of the LHP persuasion and variety of witches, oftentimes it's not always thought of, because like the controlling, commanding, domineering, compelling types of magic are not taboo at all, especially amongst the more LHP sort of crowd, while they
Mm-hmm.
typically are amongst the RHP sort of crowd. And we've talked about how we kind of use both hands and whatever, but I think that some people, when they're doing love magic, don't even think of it as that four-letter R word. They just
Mm-hmm.
think of it as like doing magic. But I have two issues with that, and I've mentioned this before. One, I don't believe you can completely break or bend or manipulate someone's free will. You can only influence free will. I don't believe you can break it entirely. So a perfect example of this, and I had talked about this in the video I did with Orly, is it is of my opinion and my experience with magic that it doesn't matter. Nora, for example, this is just totally hypothetical. You could light all the red candles in the world, say all the incantations, anoint it with all the love and lust oil, commanding, come to me, novenas, da 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 da. Like, if you're doing that spell on someone, think of it as like a seed that you're planting on someone. That's how I like to visualize it. And their heart, as cliche or stupid as this may sound, is the garden where the seed will be planted, because you're trying to manipulate their feelings and affection for you. If we're talking about love magic, that is, because
I
lust
mean,
is something different.
if we're talking about lust, you're planting that seed in an entirely different garden, girl.
Hello, hello. But that's that garden. What my point is, the soil of that garden has to be fruitful, or has to be fertile
Fertile.
for that particular seed to grow. For
Mm-hmm.
example, where, like, in the Midwest, where in Indianapolis, like, we're in zones 4 through 6. So like, if you try to plant something that thrives in zones 1 through 3, it's probably not going to do too well in this growing zone. And I think the same can be said about love and lust magic. You can only really influence. And if you really think, one, you're going to completely strip someone of their free will, that sounds like class A, capital N narcissistic behavior to me,
Yeah.
for one. And then for two, let's just humor the fact that you could. How is that not magically the 4-letter R word? And
Yeah.
I'm all down for the baneful shit. I'm all down for some baneful workings. But I'm down for like baneful for justice and for a cause, and
Yeah.
like not like that.
No. And like, just a prime rule of magic, and I mean, people want to say there are no rules. There kind of are. One of the main things that people need to keep in mind with magic is, if there's no path for the magic to travel, it's not going to go anywhere. So if you're trying to like cast love magic on someone who has no association with you whatsoever, no connection, it's probably not going to work, you know?
Yes, that is a very strong belief of mine as well, is that magic follows the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And tying this also into shapeshifting, because being a content creator, I get a lot of very varied messages. Some of these messages have me a little concerned. And I'm not sure if they're trolling or if they're genuine, but like, I've had messages before, like, can you do a spell to turn me into a mermaid? And here's my other point that leads into shapeshifting. And like, I'm going to talk about this more in my shapeshifting video, but like, I strongly also believe that magic follows the laws of nature. And so, how I personally interpret that is, if it cannot happen naturally, like if it naturally cannot happen, it is not going to happen magically. And what I mean by that is, naturally in the physical realm, if your earthly flesh and vessel in the physical realm cannot jump off of a roof and fly, you're probably not going to magically be able to do that in the physical realm. Now, in the astral realm, sure. But in the physical realm, are you going to sprout wings and jump off and fly? Like in Peter Pan? Probably not, right? Like, because magic follows the laws of nature. So in the natural world, if it's not possible, you're not going to make that manifest naturally if it goes against these natural laws. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And, just to touch on something, since we're talking about this shape shifting tea, I know we're probably going to do a whole episode on this, but, the otherkin community used to be a thing. They kind of got turned into a joke because of Tumblr. But, this is like a community of people who felt a great deal of otherness and wanting to be something other than human, which, as a trans person, as a non-binary person, I completely understand the desire for otherness, to kind of separate you from the normal human populace, because humans suck. We kind of suck, y'all. It just is what it is. But the thing of it is having a delusion to turn yourself into something else is probably not going to serve you. That being said, that doesn't mean you can't work with the energies of the things that you are interested in. Homegirl who wants to be a mermaid, okay, I understand, honey, you're probably not going to be a mermaid, but why not work with the energies of the sea and get as close as you can? This is stuff that can be done in a very real way that can give you that sense of otherness and meaning, you know?
Yeah. And also, too, like, I definitely think that a lot of this can be worked through in the astral as well, because the spirit realms, in my eyes, are held to different laws. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's different aspects of reality that our natural world and these other realms, they don't necessarily are held to the same rules is what I'm trying to say. So,
Absolutely.
but going back to lust magic, right? Like these items like chocolate covered strawberries or chocolates filled with rum or cards of affection. There are so many ways that you can enchant these. Like I know that a very popular one, like for example, I know plenty of people who maybe they're writing, a note or a card or something. I know that we did this in school. We would spray our perfume all over the paper so that when our crush would read it, they would smell us. That's a way of kind of imbuing some magic in a very simple way
That's
and
very Victorian.
using different scents like, that are aphrodisiacs can add even another whole layer to it.
Yeah, that's a very Victorian ritual. Um, Women would spray their handkerchiefs and stuff like that and give them to menfolk that they liked. And they'd be covered in their perfume and it would make them think of them and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's a very, very common ritual to employ. I think one of the first like love spells I ever learned, and a consensual love spell, is if there's someone that you have feelings for, um, you go to them and you share an apple with them on Friday, which is the day of Freya. It's also the day of Venus. And, you share an apple with someone, and that's supposed to cement your love for each other because the apple, while it has many, many, many magical associations, love is one of them. And that's just a really simple consensual love ritual that you can do if you have someone that you crush on and they kind of crush on you and you guys want to see where it goes. Share an apple on Friday and see what happens.
I think that one of my first love rituals, not so much love, but maybe more like infatuation or even lust, was also in line with spraying your perfume all over your love note. Also, like putting on some lipstick and kissing the paper. And like when you kiss the paper, kind of like pushing that sort of energy into the note. So that way, when it's opened, it kind of imbues your target. There's that as well.
Definitely. And, you know, on Valentine's Day, when you're giving out cards to people, the thing of it is I feel like the waters get kind of muddy here because, like, is it consensual to fill a card with love energy if you're giving it to someone who knows you but maybe doesn't have the same feelings for you? But like you said, if the feelings aren't there, it's not going to work.
Well, and I think too, just like people of TikTok say, you cannot claim the energy. I have gotten love notes from people before, and this might make me sound kind of mean, but like I've had no desire and no interest. And guess what? It's gone nowhere. I've thrown those love notes in the trash and moved on.
Hmm.
Like,
And it's okay to reject or be rejected. It's not the end of the world. I know some people have issues with that, but hey, there's plenty of fish in the sea.
well, and also I will tell you this, all you listeners out there, every shot you don't take, you miss. Okay. Every shot that you don't take, you miss. I think that that's a
Profound.
really I think that that's a really good analogy though, not just for maybe asking your crush out or getting the gall. Like I know someone who has had this person is a friend of mine and they I was talking to them actually the other day. They work at a convenience store and there's a regular at their convenience store who comes in several times a week to get X, Y, and Z. And this person like has a total crush on this regular, customer of this convenience store. And this has been like 2 years now. Like this is not like a new thing. Like this has been an ongoing thing. And they were talking to me like, you know, how do I address this? Like, I feel like I've had this infatuation for this person. I feel like they might have infatuation for me. Like, I see them multiple times throughout my shifts during, like, the week. Like, they come in 2 or 3 times a week to this convenience store. And is it weird if I say something? And they've actually been considering giving them a Valentine's Day card as like a way to do that. And I was like, well, I mean, you could, but like, are you just going to hold like the Valentine's Day stuff at your job and like keep it under the counter? And like when they come up, are you just going to like toss it in their bag? And they were like, well, I was kind of thinking that. Yeah. And I was like, well, I guess that's one way. Like, I don't know. Like it's tricky when work is related. And one thing I will definitely say, speaking for myself and myself alone, a huge pet peeve of mine is when specifically men try to hit on or flirt with women while they are working. That is not okay.
It's not cute. No,
It is
that's not
really
cute.
not. And we don't like it. And it makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah, we're trying to work. We don't want to flirt right now. I mean, some girls do. There are plenty of girls out there who are perfectly happy to flirt on the clock. I'm not one of those girls. You're not one of those girls.
Well, actually, let me say this though before you lump me into that category. I
Oh,
will say this. I have a video on my channel that is it's ancient. Okay, I think it was back in like 2016, 2017. I believe the video is called "Money and Sex Appeal." In that video, at the time, I was barbering. I was a men's barber, a lady barber, if you will, for men folk, and or a hashtag barber vixen, as our shop referred to us as.
oh,
And I would use aphrodisiac oils and scents all of the time and turn on my charm and feminine wiles. And I will tell you, the days that I kept stones in my bra associated with lust and love, and the days that I wore aphrodisiac oils and perfumes, it directly reflected in my tips. Okay.
that's
So that is a
fair.
very real thing. Depending on the occupation, she might not be friendly. She might just be doing her job.
Right.
Okay.
So I will say this. That's to me, that's a little different because you're working for tips. You're in direct contact with like a one-on-one kind of situation. Um, I mean, I know that when I was a server, I would keep all kinds of stuff to generate money. Now, mind you, it wasn't necessarily from a lusty standpoint. Like I used to keep like I would line my pockets with like basil and gold magnetic sand, and I would keep certain things in my apron to bring money to me. Um, but I mean, when you're doing the barbers for the men, when you're being a barbarian for the men, um, I can see why you'd do that. But the difference, I think, is that you're not flirting for love or lust or interest. You're flirting for money.
Well, and also I'll say this too, and this is brave yet controversial. There are a lot of men out there who will take basic kindness and good customer service as flirtation. You don't even
Yes.
have to be flirting with
Yeah,
them for
that's
them to
true.
think that you're flirting. For example, like having someone in my chair and me asking them, "How's your day going?" That might be a real big indication that I'm flirting with them because no one asks how their day's going. So then they sit with me and
Mhm.
share how their day is going and they talk to me and blah, 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 blah. And this also happens outside of just barbershops. I mean, women do this too. And it's not always an infatuation thing, but there is something about the barber chair and also the bar, because I've worked behind a bar too, that when people are in these positions, they just open up very easily.
True.
Um, and as like a barber or a hairdresser, when you're shampooing your client's hair, or if you're braiding your client's hair or coloring your client's hair, I mean, there's a reason why a lot of witches historically have also been hairdressers, is because, in my opinion, some of this beauty magic is a form of shape shifting and glamour magic and illusionary magic, if you will. And there's also ways to influence or bless or curse that client that you are working on too. You need to be really respectful to your hairdressers, especially if they're cutting your hair. And that's all I'm going to say on that. Okay.
And that's on period. Going over lust magic, I just thought of something kind of funny that I hadn't thought about in years because I haven't really attended Pride in a long time. And for those who don't know, I am also a transgender woman. I think I've said that a few times before on this podcast, but in case anyone didn't know, I am a transgender woman. At one point in time, before I officially came out as trans, I was presenting as a young gay. I haven't attended Pride in a long time because I've been attending occult festivals that happen at the same time, and those were a little bit more important to me at the time. But when I was presenting as a young gay, I mean, I used to go to Pride with Orris root or Queen Elizabeth root in my pocket. Which, for those who don't know, magically, if we have any young gays listening, Orris root or Queen Elizabeth root is oftentimes used to attract a male lover. And I would spray myself with "Come to Me, Boy," oil and stuff like that, and I'd walk around trying to find a piece, you know?
As a young gay does.
Especially at Pride, you know?
Oh, you got to. That's
You
part of it, honey.
got to, the
That's
hunt.
like I feel like that's like our summertime Lupercalia, if you will.
And I mean, like I just said, that's the hunt. Because I mean, really, there's a lot of primality and hunting and sniffing around with that. Now, mind you, that's not my tea anymore. I am happily married in a polyamorous relationship. You know, I don't need to go hunting no more. I hung up at least my hunting pelt for that. I have pelts for many other things.
But
Uh,
dare I say, the wild hunt.
the wild hunt, which could be a whole nother episode in and of itself. We might be talking about the Fae at some point in the near future. And the
Well,
wild
yeah,
hunt plays into that for sure.
we have an episode with Sid that we'll be doing that will be, on Patreon here soon, and will be on YouTube later, probably closer to around the actual time. But we're going to be talking about spring equinox stuff, and then we'll see where that conversation leads us. But I think the Fae probably need their own episode in order to really do it justice.
I think they deserve that, yeah. But not to diverge too much further. Do you have any fun lust magic stories, Jasmine?
Oh, honey. Oh, honey.
That
Honey,
we can
lust magic?
that we can
Honey.
share on here. I have
Oh,
another one,
honey.
but it's bad.
I have two off the top of my head that I can think of. And I think one is kind of when lust magic goes wrong, story time. And then I have another one that would be kind of something more for all of the couples out there listening. So I'll start first with the couples one because it's a little bit shorter, quicker, sweeter, to the point. Something that is a big part of like my personal relationship with my partner is like we both work a lot, and so we're not able to spend large amounts of time together, which is okay. We're both the kind of people too that like after a long work week, we actually kind of need to isolate a little bit and recharge. So I really enjoy that in my relationship. We have that time apart and we have that time together. And I enjoy that we also have separate lives as well. Like, I like that we share stuff together, but like he has his friend circle and I have mine. And sometimes that overlaps, but just because we're in a relationship doesn't mean it always overlaps. Cause there's couples out there where it's like, okay, they're kind of a 2-for-1 deal. Like if you want to hang out with one, you have to hang out with the other. And that's kind of annoying sometimes. But one of the lust magic things for partners, and this is a very simple thing that you can do. My partner, one of their primary love languages, touch. And understanding your partner's love language is one of the most important things, in my opinion, that you can do for yourself and for your marriage or your relationship, as well as understanding astrologically your partner's Venus sign, because that's also how they're going to show and express and also receive love. So you have to keep in mind your love language might be, for example, acts of service. But if your partner's love language is words of affirmation, you could be doing stuff for your partner around the clock for them. And if you're not verbalizing to them how important they are to you, they're not going to feel it. And vice versa. If their love language is, words of affirmation, but yours is acts of service, they could be gassing you up all day long, sending you poetry through text, doting on you, loving you, telling you how proud they are. But that's not really going to do much for you if it's acts of service and you're like, okay, but why can't you do this, or this, right? So when my partner and I, we took these love language quizzes, which there's many free ones online that you guys can check out. I think it's a great activity for partners to do, whether they be monogamous or polyamorous, whatever. Many free websites out there. Typically, you have your primary and your secondary. And it's kind of cool to do it with your partner and see if you guys match up or if you differ. Because I think a lot of conflicts in relationships come down to miscommunications, and a lot of that has to do with love language. Like I've said before, right, with those analogies. If your love language is physical touch, but my love language is gifts, because that's another one. Like, if I'm not being intimate with you, which touch is not exclusive to sex, okay? It's also holding hands or cuddling or coming home from work and giving your partner a big hug. Like, that's touch. Just like gifts is not always necessarily spending hundreds of dollars. Gifts could also be like kind of the crow brain aspect of, oh, I went to the gas station to get gas. I know how much you like Three Musketeer bars, so I got you one. Now that's kind of gifts and acts of service. But
Or if it was for you,
anyways,
it'd have to be a bag of hot Cheetos.
hello. You know, I love a hot crisp. But so my one of my partner's love language is physical touch. So like cuddling and like massage is a big thing. And, you know, sometimes I like to really set kind of a ceremonial mood, if you will, and, you know, light some candles of corresponding colors and have some oil burning and the oil burner or the diffuser, right? Of like corresponding aphrodisiacs, love, peace, all those things. Maybe pull out some body oils, you know what I mean? Maybe draw a pentagram on his chest with your lipstick sort of moment, if you will. That's a quote from Yolande's whatever. But like metaphorically speaking, you could trace it with your acrylics or something like that. And you could draw sigils into your partner's skin during a massage. And it doesn't always have to just be for love, lust, and compelling. It could also be for protection. You know, maybe your partner works a job that has some pretty serious hazards to it. That's a great time to be casting protections over your partner, especially when they're very open to it. And if you're already with your partner, that's kind of different than throwing and casting love magic to manipulate someone's complete free will. Like, obviously, my partner knows that there's some witchy shit going on when I'm sitting on his back and massaging his back and tracing his skin, right? Like, clearly there's some shit going on. And he asks for it. So
Salacious.
That's one example for the couples out there. But yeah, I do have a horror story about some lust magic gone wrong. Going back to the hairdressing, this was in about 2017. I was actually stalked by a client who he would come in and he was not an older gentleman, but he was about 20 years older than me at the time. And he was a very attractive ex-Marine, like very well taken care of kind of guy. And he already kind of had a crush on me to begin with. And I should not have pushed the envelope in this situation. But going back to what we mentioned earlier, I'm in my early 20s. I'm working for tips and I got to pay my bills and my bills need paid. You know what I mean? So the nicer I was and the more friendly I was, not that I was intentionally misleading him, because I'm not saying that I was doing that necessarily, but like I said, basic kindness and good customer service is already mistaken for flirtation half the time, right? So there'd be times where I would, you know, take him back and shampoo his hair out. And, you know, I would kind of be singing some little money hymns in my head or things like that. And he just took it, he was too receptive of it. Like that soil was a little bit too fertile for those seeds, because this little seed I tried to plant turned into a luscious garden that was overgrowing to the point where it was, you know, it was too much growth, if you will. And after a couple times of me cutting his hair, there was one time where he waited for me to get off work in the parking lot. And that's a huge boundary. Like, it's one thing to kind of kiki and laugh at the job. But the second you're now following me outside of those four walls, now you're kind of triggering my fight or flight mode and you're entering creeper status, you know?
That's spooky.
So that's one example. You do want to be careful. Especially, like, you know, I was in my early 20s. At this time I was 23. So especially for you early 20s, you want to be careful, because I've definitely learned in my 12 years now of being a professional cosmetologist that you know, I've noticed how now that I'm on the other side of my 20s, as I'm approaching my 30s, it's creepy, but men kind of have treated me differently than when I was a young 20-something-year-old. It's really unsettling. I mean, I still get attention and, you know, catcalls and blah, 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 which is, I mean, I'm not saying I want that, but I'm just saying, like, it's interesting the way that I'm treated now versus the way I was treated. And I'm saying specifically in barbershops. Okay. Than when I was in my early 20s. So anyway, I've rambled. What are some of your stories?
So I do have one horror story that it's really bad though. So I was a young 20-something in this story. This was before I started transitioning, and I was at a party. And there was a young man
Oh
there
my
that
goodness, you at a party?
I know it's hard to imagine
You were at a party?
my field mouse librarian ass at a party, right?
Now hold on. Were you at a party by choice, or did you have an extroverted loudmouth BFF who drug you out?
No, this was actually by choice. Um,
Really?
I was a
Okay.
I used to party. I used to party. I wasn't quite the hermity antiquarian that I am now. Um, but I went to this party and there was a guy there. And just a cautionary thing here. When I was in my 20s, I had a thing for the straight boys, and I'm not gonna lie, the straight boys had a thing for me.
Oh, honey,
Um,
honey, we call that trade, honey. Oh,
right?
honey, trade,
The
the
the tr-
trade.
the trade had a thing for me because I had long black hair. I didn't dress conventionally masculine because I've always been extremely feminine, hence, why I am of the Tran Empire now. Um, and there was this gentleman there, and he wasn't a gentleman, but he was a cute guy, and I wanted some, but he was interested in another girl at the party, and I said, nay, nay. um, so I decided, because whoever hosted the party, which was a friend of mine, I know who it was, but they had a bowl of fruit. So I went and got some cherries out of this bowl, and I enchanted these cherries, and I walked up to him and I started feeding him these cherries. And while I was doing this, I was weaving all kinds of lust and domination magic into this. And this was not good. This was not the tea. This was some bad stuff. And this is what we're talking about when this stuff goes wrong, because it kind of worked. He started paying more attention to me. He even gave me a little smoochy smooch, if you know what I'm saying. But it caused some kind of trauma in him, I would have to think, because he was very confused. Because this guy, he was allegedly straight, and he was very confused. He left the party and then was gone for about an hour, and then came back like in a daze. Like, we had to drive him back home because he was like in this weird, like, delirium, delusional daze. Like, he couldn't focus on anything. He was rambling. And I have to be honest, after that party, I don't think I've ever seen him again. I don't know what happened to him.
Oh, bless his heart. May he rest in peace.
Like,
Honey, or rest in pieces, honey. Honey, rest in pieces.
I hope that he is well and healthy and everything like that. I deeply regret that I ever did that. But
So I think this is a good example of why, like, also listeners, tell me what you think of this little photo. I know that it's kind of cropped, kind of weird for the podcast, but I feel like it's cute. And I feel like this is a perfect representation of what we're talking about. I'm like, honey, may he rest in pieces. You're like, well, I hope wherever he is, he's okay.
like, I don't wish him ill. Like, he was receptive to my magic for a moment, and then I think it broke him. But, like, don't mess with people's minds. Don't mess with people's free will, because you don't know what kind of harm you're going to do. And, this was a long time ago. I was a stupid young witch at one point in time. A lot of us, when we are young and witches, pull some magical BS that we should not be pulling. I'm sure, Jasmine, you've probably done some things that were maybe a little regrettable when you were a young witch.
Well, I'm going to say this in terms of that. And this is going to be kind of some of my closing thoughts on this whole baneful lust and love thing. Here's the thing, babe. Okay. And I'm saying this to the listeners. Okay. You've heard Nora's advice. My advice is, if you're going to do bad right. Okay. That's what I'm going to say. And it's none of my business. And yeah. So.
I can't disagree with that. If you're going to do bad right. At least be good at it. At the time, I was still a new witch. I did bad, and it went
And
bad.
I've done bad too. So, but yeah, well, I'm looking at the time here, and this streaming platform I use gets angry if we go over an hour. So we've got about 10 minutes left. To wrap up here, we've talked about Lupercalia, we've talked about werewolves. We kind of went on a tangent in various forms of magic and our experiences with these aspects. Do you have any closing thoughts, Nora?
My closing thoughts are, Valentine's Day is what it is. It's not great for everybody. Some people have a really rough time with Valentine's Day. If you are single, celebrate yourself. Buy yourself some flowers. Buy yourself some jewelry. Buy yourself some chocolate. Have an intimate moment with yourself. You know, like it doesn't have to be about someone else. And spend Valentine's Day with your friends. If you're single and your friends are single, do something with your friends. Have a Galentine's Day or a
Or even if
Broentine's
your
Day.
friends, even if your friends aren't single, like have a Galentine's Day. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, kind of off the topic of this, but like my family, when we celebrate Mother's Day, we don't just celebrate our biological mother, we celebrate kind of the animistic archetype of mother, period. And I think Valentine's Day, at least how I kind of interpret it and how I celebrate it, is I'm not just celebrating the love I have for my partner, but I'm celebrating love.
For
And whether or
sure.
not that has any correlation to the origins of Valentine's Day and the energy around this time of year, to me, that's irrelevant because I just use this time of year to kind of focus on, the Greeks had what, 5 or 8 different types of love of spirituality, love of your brethren, love of your children, love of your peers,
Hmm.
blah, 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 love of the land. Like, I kind of use it as just like focusing on my love for the different things in my life.
Hmm.
And at the risk of sounding cliche, maybe even some gratitude.
Gratitude. You? Gratitude?
We're grateful sometimes.
Sometimes. But
But
yeah,
yeah,
I
thank you
agree with that.
guys. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Nora.
Oh,
Anything?
sorry. I was just going to say, I agree with that completely. And yeah, happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day, happy Lupercalia, happy all of those festivals I mentioned from the Grandmother of Time book, which is by Susanna E. Budapest. I got my copy at Half Price Books for literally $7.99. I believe it's on Amazon. It's a great book to check out if you're interested in some more obscure pagan holidays that is more than just the typical 8 Wiccan Wheel of the Year holidays. So yeah, anyway, until next time, blessed be.
Blessed be.